What was interesting, I think, about the interview, Isabel, I know you've seen it all now, was there were other things in that interview that I felt were much more newsworthy. One was where he basically called Keir Starmer a terror sympathiser over this banned group. We had that NHS doctor on the show who leads the UK arm of that now prescribed terror group in this country. And he basically called Starmer a terror sympathiser for trying to stop them becoming a prescribed group by acting for them. And the other thing I thought was really newsworthy was the confirmation by the Prime Minister that one of his key 5 pledges to get NHS waiting lists down, which he actually coupled with sorting out the crisis in the A&E, he failed on. Let's take a look. NHS waiting lists.
We have not made enough progress.
You failed on that pledge?
Yes.
Because you said NHS waiting lists will fall. But the waiting list is still nearly 500,000 more than it was at the start of last year. So my mother is 79 and she had a heart attack 3 months ago. And she was taken to a local hospital and she was seen when she got there, and then she was put on a trolley in A&E, in a corridor, for nearly 7 hours. The heart monitor battery ran out. Nobody fixed it. At one stage, no nurse came for 3 or 4 hours. And she was also terrified, of course, having been told you've had a heart attack, that no one was putting her into the unit and actually trying to fix her. Now, once she got up there, the treatment she got was world class. But I brought this one picture to show you. That's my mum. And when she really needed the NHS, eventually the NHS came through. But she could have died on that trolley. And I think that's shocking.
Yeah, that is a shocking story. And I'm really glad that she's feeling better now, and send her my best. And I'm glad she got the treatment that she needed.
This was a Monday night, Prime Minister. This wasn't even a weekend.
Yeah.
And it's not even a major city. This is Brighton. Yeah. And there were 40-odd people on trolleys in a corridor. Well, I got an email today, which we're trying to corroborate, Isabel, but it was from somebody else at exactly the same hospital whose mother died on a trolley in that A&E and was there for 24 hours.
Well,
and I think this is going on up and down the country.
I really want to pick up on that. Yeah, I really want to pick up on that, because if I were the Labour Party or any opposition party, I would play that particular clip of your interview on a loop and look at the Prime Minister's reaction. To me, this is the most insightful bit of the interview. There is something very, very wrong about the Prime Minister's reaction to your story. He shows no empathy. There is no form of shock in his reaction to your story. He's robotic about it. And that really, really jarred with me. And, I am so glad to hear that when your mum was finally taken up onto the ward, that she got the treatment that you described. You said it was world class. But you, in a sense, you were lucky. Look, my mother recently died in an NHS hospital. I am sorry to say that she died in front of a lot of people, that none of us had any privacy. And in the seconds after she died, my sisters and I were taken into a store cupboard because there was nowhere private for us to go. So I wasn't planning on sharing that story, but the Prime Minister's reaction to your story has, if you like, triggered me to do that, because it was so lacking in any real empathy for the many, many thousands of people tonight who are on hospital trolleys and are not getting the treatment that they deserve. The NHS is failing, and he's admitted it, and it's failed on his watch.
Yeah, well, I'm very sorry about your mum. You and I have talked about that before, and it's incredibly sad for you. And I feel very fortunate that my mother was able to come through it. To have a heart attack in your late 70s and then spend 7 hours on a trolley thinking, what is happening to me, with the heart monitor regularly running out of batteries and no one seemed to notice it, was scary.
Awful.
Paul, what did you make of that part of the interview?
Again, I was looking at his face and thinking, look, Prime Minister doesn't get to meet a lot of ordinary people. And when he does, you were very measured with him. But imagine, we can all imagine a voter saying the same story. Right. What would happen in general is that the people behind him would just gently edge him away. Yes. And I think that if he can learn anything, it is listen to these ordinary stories. I bet every single one of us, including all your studio staff, could tell the same story. I've got stories of 48 hours in A&E.
I've had so many in the last 2 days.
So the NHS is failing. It so happens that we've had one party in government for 14 years, but I'd say, there is a long-term problem with NHS. I actually think, my hunch, I don't know about you and Isabel, my hunch is that people care a lot more about these stories of everyday hardship than they do about whether the Rwanda scheme deports 200.
And they actually care, Paula, more about the reality of human stories than they do about the over top-line statistics. You can hear 7.6 million people on a waiting list. You can hear A&E's out of control. When you actually have a loved one trapped in that nightmare of waiting for an op to save their life or waiting to get into through A&E, it is terrifying.
Absolutely, and I think there's two things here. The first is that you're right. When he's approached by a member of the public, we saw it just a couple of weeks ago, he laughed in response to that member of the public. He was caught off guard. He didn't know what to do. But that
clip was cut unfairly. Actually, they then showed the longer clip, and that also happens now.
The second point that I wanted to make, though, was about the disconnect. It's the disconnect that we recognise in this story about your mother, and it's the same disconnect that we recognise in terms of the bed. We're talking about our Prime Minister, who doesn't have the capacity to be sensitive enough to understand that when he's asked about making a bet on what is something that for many is a life or death situation, be it about the NHS, be it about Rwanda, that he can just limply shake your hand on a policy that we know, or we are being told, aren't we, that he doesn't even agree with, but he's having to push through.
Look,
it's empty,
I